Being on the front lines in the fight to educate the next generation is tough. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with important updates, encouragement, and connection. Welcome to the Institute Leaders Lifeline. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Institute Leaders Lifeline. My name is Mike Sinclair, Deputy Superintendent of School Support at the Charter Institute at Erskine. I want to welcome you, and hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving. Hopefully you were able to spend some of those days with family, friends, great food, maybe some football, and just take a deep breath. You know, disconnecting is such an important part of being a leader, being able to just separate yourself from the work. And that's really what we're talking about in this series on mindfulness, is how do you deal with that anxiety and stress that you feel by being a leader? It's inherent in being a leader. You're not going to be able to avoid it. The challenge is really, how do you cope with it? How do you adjust to it? But before we get started, I do have some announcements here, just some reminders for our charter leaders as part of our institute. The first thing is, don't forget our holiday Christmas card competition. The due date for those is December the 2nd. We love for your students to submit different card ideas and drawings for us to consider. We want to make sure that we are recognizing our students in the work that we do. It's all about the students. We can sometimes get caught up on all the business, but we want to recognize our students. So make sure that you have students submitting their card ideas by December the 2nd. The next thing I have is, don't forget the school choice rally. That's been in some information I'm sending out to you, but January 25th is the school choice rally at the Capitol here in Columbia. Now, why is that important to you? Because the choice environment is on the verge of expanding tremendously, and we need to make sure that charter schools are on the tip of the tongue of our leaders, that when they're in the State House or they're in the State Department of Education, they don't forget us. They don't forget how important we are to our students and the education landscape in the state of South Carolina. So stay with us. Make sure that you are looking at that announcement and you register your school to participate January 25th. Would love to see every one of the schools from the Charter Institute at Erskine represented in that parade as we come up to the State House. So lots of great things coming up, and I am so glad that you are with us. Christmas is right around the corner. The break is right around the corner, and there's a lot of things to do in these 3 weeks, whether it's map testing, whether it's exams, whether it's your 90th days coming up, lots of those things. So make sure that you're scheduling them out so that you can get those things done. And we are here to support you, so please let us know what we can do. Now, let's get to this week's focus. Last week, we were talking about mindfulness and dealing with stress and anxiety, and we really talked about the first thing was recognizing when those things were coming. Being self-aware enough that you can feel that physical change coming and adjust or implement some of your strategies before it expands into a significant reaction. So we talked about breathing. We had a couple of strategies last week on breathing. We talked about quick inhale, quick exhale if you didn't have time to stop and go through a breathing exercise. And then we had a couple different breathing exercises. The square, 4 seconds in, hold it for 4 out, keep the exhale out for 4 seconds. So we had a couple of those. Today, I really want to look at concentrating on your physical environment. So when stress and anxiety comes, typically it is because we are creating a reality in our head. We are anticipating, we are creating options that may or may not happen, and they become overwhelming. We're typically not grounded in what's happening at that moment. We're more concerned, we're more overwhelmed by possibilities that may or may not happen. So let's spend some time today talking about a couple of strategies to help us stay grounded in the moment and in our physical environment. The first is something as simple as a stress ball. This is an apple, it's nice and spongy. So when you are feeling overwhelmed and you have something in your hand, I used to click a pen all the time, and that would drive my staff crazy, but that's how I would deal with my stress and anxiety. Or have a pen that I could turn to take the top off or whatever. I broke a lot of pens in my career, I'll be very honest with you, but that was the way I dealt with some of that stress and anxiety when I felt it coming on, and when I was with a parent or a student or someone from the outside, I would hold it below the table and I would be just messing with that pen left and right, but it kept me grounded in something physical so that my mind would stay present and not out in all of these hypothetical situations that may or may not happen. Stress ball is something that you can just squeeze. It's just something to bring you into that moment. It's a physical, it's a tactile, it's a muscular movement that takes you from living in your mental thoughts and all of those what ifs, and it grounds you into your physical. You've got something right here in front of you. So those are just two very tactile things that you can do to keep yourself grounded. There's all kinds of different fidget spinners or whatever, but have something with you that can ground you in that moment and get you out of your own head. Another strategy that you could use is a 3-2-1 to bring you in. Take a moment. Again, this is harder to do when you're with somebody or you're in a situation where you're engaged. This is more of if you feel it coming on and you have a second to or a few seconds to step out, kind of like those longer breathing strategies, and you could step out. 3, 2, 1. What are 3 things that you see? If you can go outside and do this, it's even better because you can physically see leaves or grass or cars, and you can focus on exactly all of the characteristics of those 3 things. Again, we're trying to bring ourselves into the moment and not be caught up in all of the hypotheticals. So that's the 3. What are 3 things you can see? The next one would be, what are 2 things you can touch? Again, it's kind of like the tactile piece of it. What are 2 things you can touch? We're trying to bring ourselves into the moment. So if you are in an office, maybe it's picking up a book and just kind of flipping through it. It might be picking up a stapler. It might be outside. You've got some leaves on the ground, or you've got a bench that you can kind of put your hand on, something to physically touch. And the last one, the 1, would be, what is something you hear? What is something you hear? So now you have your vision, your touch, and your audible, all trying to bring you into the present. What are 3 things you can see? What are 2 things you can touch? What's 1 thing you can hear? I hope these strategies help you as you are coping with just the normal stress and anxiety that comes with the job. Again, if you're feeling extreme stress and anxiety, don't hesitate to find someone to talk to. There is absolutely no shame in talking to a counselor, setting up that appointment, or maybe you have a coworker or a spouse or another family member or friend that you can talk to, but somebody that you trust. Don't go through all of this by yourself. Make sure that you're reaching out if it's at that level of need. And thanks for joining me on this journey through leadership as we explore all the things that make us united, even though we're in different parts. So take care of yourself and take care of your team. Be sure to follow the Institute on all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. At Erskine Charters, we'll have all of these resources, including this podcast, mini stories of our schools, and other things. So check us out. The opinions expressed within the content are solely the authors and do not reflect the opinions and beliefs of the Charter Institute at Erskine or its affiliates.